Everyone, this is update for July 17, 2023, day 509 of the war, end of the date update. Also catch up for July 16. I'm gonna discuss strategic developments, and then we're gonna switch to Ukraine, as always. So first, there was new data came on the 16th from China, specifically GDP, industrial production, retail sales, and fixed assets. As you can see, the GDP grew 6.3% year on year for Q2, and it's a higher, sort of faster growth, acceleration and growth relative to the prior Q1, I guess, year on year. I would say I'm extremely suspicious of these numbers for the following reasons. This number. So if we look at retail sales, it's one of the main components of the GDP calculation. So it's effectively consumer expenditures plus fixed what says here fixed asset investments plus exports minus import plus government's expenditure. So we have all of the components here to kind of look at it, with exception of government. So if you look at like retail sales, they grew only 3.1. There it was 12.7. The growth was faster in May. However, fixed assets, they definitely didn't grow that much, didn't even close to 6.3%. And then if you look at the export, as you can see, the picture is pretty ugly. So it's actually net negative. So it basically it doesn't add to GDP. It's in a way subtracts from GDP because as you can see, it's falling down. So I mean, I don't know what's the government spending there, and maybe that's a plug. But beyond that, it simply looks very suspicious. But I would also say if the June is sort of the trend that China is going to be going through for the rest of the year, it's definitely, as you can see, numbers here 43% roughly, and actually export is negative. So the GDP growth should go back to even below 4.5. And again, the government is another big unknown, and we'll see what happens there. But as you can see, looks like the Chinese government is really pumping credit into the economy. So and maybe that's what explains partially this whole huge jump, meaning that somehow it goes through the government. I don't know enough, but it's very clear that this growth we see here 6.3% is significantly achieved by this credit pumping or debt pumping into the economy, because you can see it's 4.2 trillion. Before it was 1.5 trillion. So it's a huge push of, I don't know, call it narcotics or steroids into the economy to make it grow, to basically potentially paint this picture. And even then we see that the picture is still pretty weak, let's put it this way. Then there is not much data except for Italy. Italy just confirming general trend that inflation is subsiding, definitely going down. We're not gonna I would say for now we're not gonna see 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% numbers, but it doesn't go also to sort of 0 or 1 or 2%. Which is 2% is a target for most Western central banks. It's probably going to stay around 4%, and that's not going to be in the long run pretty picture. Now let's look at what's going on with the US banking system. So as you can see, situation in the banking system got, I would say, somewhat better, more stable. The loss of deposits stopped, and it looks like they start to grow, which is a sign of, I would say, return of, I wouldn't say healthiness to banking system, because as I said, the banking system still has the same problem, but at least the trust or worry of the depositors is gone, and they comfortable putting money back into the system, and that's by itself is good enough for the banking system, because banking system is based on trust. It's essentially inherently by design unstable, because banks lend out money that they get from depositors, so they never have money to return to depositors if enough depositors show up ahead of time before the term of their deposit expires. So just by design, there's this flaw in it, and it seems like it's being sort of there is some trust, or people not concerned anymore as much, and this is mostly big businesses. This is not ordinary citizens. This is extremely it's like top 1% and large businesses and medium-sized businesses. That's what really drives these deposits here. So apparently they are not concerned. They bring money back to the system. Still somewhat unclear, because the returns are extremely low still in the US banking system. Just as I explained, the banking system cannot afford to offer high interest on the deposits, because they already lend at very low interest rate to the borrowers. So you cannot, at this point increase, because then you're going to be at loss. So that's a whole problem, and strategically it didn't go away. It's still there. It just waits its time. And the reason why it's, this situation is sort of looks okay and stable is actually, if we go, this is the reason, because the M2 money supply, there's still plenty what's called liquidity, plenty of debt-based money in the system, because as you can see, there was a huge jump around March 2020 for the events we all know. And that pile of money is still there. It's still available, and it's way below the trend what is needed in the economy. So if we just kind of like primitively extrapolate this trend, it tells us that the economy probably will be still okay until we hit, let's say, 19 trillion mark, and we way above that. I think it's around 21 or slightly below 21, but in any case, there is still plenty of this debt-based money, and so that really supports the rest of it. So if we look just to confirm the same sort of story, the same picture. So first of all, interest rates remains doesn't go higher, remains more or less in this sort of range. And then if we look to the borrowing that this banks in distress are doing, it's definitely not increasing in the amount, and the sort of total amount is actually going up, even though the direct primary this bank term funding program, which is created for this purpose, remains stable. So again, this goes back to the whole story is the banking system is in trouble on a accrual basis, but on a cash basis, everything's okay because of that huge pile of M2 debt-based money that you saw there, and that's what really keeps everything afloat for now, and including strong equity market as well. Now let's switch to Ukraine. So first, I want to mention what I wrote. Is that Ukrainian forces hit this Crimean Bridge. Part of the regular road was destroyed in one direction. Well, not part, the section was completely destroyed. The other section that leads in the opposite direction is damaged. The extent of the damage is unclear. The more important is that railroad bridge that's sort of parallel to the road bridge is not affected or extremely little damage. And in general, this attack the damage wasn't that severe because the pillars that really support the whole structure, that's basically like a backbone of the structure, were not affected. So only the section above, which I mean, it's obviously not great, but it's relatively easy to replace, and it's not in some ways it's not the sort of load bearing system. So basically, it's not the main load bearing. It's obviously, carries some load, but the pillars are really the backbone of it, and that's what really load bearing parts of the structure, and that seems to be in okay shape. So what is this? Is if Ukrainian forces were doing offensive, this attack would make a lot of sense. If Ukrainian forces are not doing offensive, this attack is, absolutely senseless. There is no point in this attack. In some way, I would say again, this is some sort of sign of desperation rather than anything else. Because from military perspective, it doesn't make any kind of sense. At the same time, which is obviously probably somehow related. We can all speculate. I don't know much more. This grain deal has expired, which is I personally extremely surprised. I did believe that the Turkish president will force hand of the Russian president and Russian government. It turns out that not. It turns also that it's not only Turkish president, it's also Chinese president, and Chinese top were also influencing Russia to extend the deal, and they were extremely, I'd say, vocal about it. Nevertheless, looks like Russian political top decided to show, show their strengths and determination. That's how I would describe it. In terms of, because there's a lot of speculation effect of this deal on the hunger in the world and so on. So when Russian propaganda machine shows that most of the grain was actually going to Turkey, as I said before, even more so to China. Then I think there was Italy and Spain. Those are like top four that took significant portion of the grain. So actual grain that went to, let's say, poor countries in Africa was minuscule. I don't remember numbers, but the point is not exactly numbers, but like it was very low numbers. So in this, on the surface, that's actually true that most of the grain didn't go to the poorest countries where there is hunger. That's correct statement, but this statement is propaganda, and the reason for that is because it's taking out of the context. And the point of this is that it's a one big single global grain market. There's no Ukrainian grain market, Turkish grain market, Chinese grain market, the same as there is no European crude oil market, Russian or Chinese crude oil market. This is one big sort of bowl. Think about this for the entire world, and therefore there is one price for that bowl, for the every unit of the whatever we have there, crude oil or grain or anything else. And so if you take away, so you think about this, you had in the bowl 10 units of whatever, right? And so the price was lower. So you remove, let's say, 5 units of whatever from the bowl. So you have 95 right now. So the price A goes up and there is less of this stuff. And in this case, it's grain. So there is simply less grain for the world. And for sure, China will get its grain, whatever they needed, like, let's say 30 units of grain, they will get 30 units of grain no matter what. They just pay a little bit higher price. What this really means is the poorest who will not have money to pay, and they will have, the price will be higher, so they will not get that 5 units. So this is basically, kind of like thinking about it from like elasticity. Those who can afford to pay, they will be hurt the most in this system because they don't have money to pay higher prices, and that's who will not end up having, and that's going to be the poorest countries of this planet. And from that perspective, that is actually correct statement that leads to hunger in the, let's say, Africa, or I don't know, Asia, whatever those countries are in this on this planet. So hopefully this helps to understand how propaganda actually works, and it's always about taking things out of the context and not mentioning the whole picture, or trying to basically manipulation in a way. Now let's also going back to general sort of statement of what's going on the battlefield in Ukraine. Is, as I said before, it's a generally stalemate, really looking like a World War One, with neither side is having any any clear advantage or any sort of light at the end of the tunnel, how they gonna sort of move the situation in their favor at this point. And I would say, all of that Western equipment that Ukraine gets, it's just not going to help. It's just not enough of it. It's for the low level of organizational and in general training and organization in Ukrainian army. To compensate that disadvantage, there is a need for much more equipment. So there's always two ways, either quality or quantity. If Ukraine doesn't have quality, then you need to compensate with excessive quantity. And that's where it stands. On Russian side, they never sort of interested in quality because they always have a lot sort of quantity, plentiness of quantity, and so that's a general Russian strategy, is to rely on quantity, and they know that they can outlast Ukraine in this war of attrition. It's just very simple, and it's very simple strategy. Being played by Russian leadership. All they need is that inside of Russia there is no 1917 moment, and that's all they care. And that's why they were so nervous, stressed, and so on with the Wagner Group. And that's why, even though the Wagner Group is sort of part of the system, it's not fighting the system and so on, they were still extremely scared, because that's the only weak point in Russia in general. So now let's walk through the front line in a clockwise fashion, as I always do, starting from very north. So the situation along the state border is getting a little bit warmer. Ukrainian groups are basically crossing the border again in Belgorod region, and attacking Russian military there. So there was one successful attack where they ambushed Russian military truck and killed soldiers there and so on. The reason I'm saying this is because it creates a lot of stress on the Russian side. At the same time, as I said before, Russian command is not going to bring, looks like they will not bring any regular military units. It will not force the hand of the Russian military, because they have, for now, this Kadyrov troops, which is essentially militarized police from Chechen Republic, and that's good enough. Let's put it this way. It's certainly will be, there will be a lot of these actions by Ukrainian side on the Russian side, but at the same time, it's not enough of a pain for Russia, and Russia can sort of withstand that pain. Now let's move to the North Luhansk front line. Things here are the same. There is, in a sense, it's all tactical fighting. So from that perspective, from a tactical fighting perspective, Russian troops managed to capture small village Novoselivske, which is here, which is attached to big other, like sort of basically attached to the bigger village. But the whole point is this is a tactical success. It's not major offensive or anything like that. It's just Ukrainian forces were weak here, and they managed to eventually break through. Again, it's not a penetration. It's just, again, the same as what Ukrainian troops, a squeeze of the opponent, and that's all it is. So again, nothing major otherwise here is happening. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line, and things here are basically more or less the same, stable. Russian troops trying to counterattack here north of Bakhmut. Ukrainian troops attack. It's basically back force, without really any meaningful success here. The area where Ukrainian troops might be able to have tactical success, and again, it's all squeezed, the same as we've seen up north, is looks like this village Kuzemivka will be liberated by the 3rd Brigade. I don't know, maybe within a week or so, because essentially they control all most of the heights around it, and that really means that this village is becoming like too expensive to defend, basically, for the Russian side, and so eventually it will be lost, looks like. So again, this is the similar idea of limited tactical success, squeezing opposing party. It doesn't lead to anything. The same World War I again. Fighting for months to move forward for like 500 meters or 1 kilometer. Now let's move to the central Donbass front line. Since here again, the same as broken record, Russian attacks around this north of Avdiivka, south of Avdiivka, from the Spitsky salient, then Marinka, and again without any success. Just situation is essentially stable here. Let's move to Zaporizhya front line. So here, Ukrainian side is still doing, I would say, tactical attacks, even though they officially call still this offensive, which is, I would call, it's not offensive. It's just misuse of the term. It's never been offensive, because offensive is done in very different way. But they're still trying to squeeze Russian troops here from basically Staromlinivka and Urozhaina. These two villages, they kind of like go in package. So if Staromlinivka is going to get lost, Urozhaina kind of goes with it together. So that's just, and you cannot take Urozhaina, you first need to take Staromlinivka. So basically, Ukrainian troops actually already got into Staromlinivka, I think on the 16th, but did not manage to keep control of it. So there was a local counterattack by Russian troops, and they were kicked out. But essentially, this is just there will be another attempt eventually. Ukrainian troops will apparently liberate these two villages, and that will lead to nothing, basically. Again, the same what I said before. This is World War I, and there's neither side has the ability to really make breach, real penetration, and exploit that breach. This is all just local squeezes that are extremely expensive, and they don't lead to anyone. And for Ukrainian side, really leads to any of these gains will actually bring Ukrainian side to defeat, because Ukrainian side does not have human resources to waste like they are being wasted right now in this senseless attacks. So in some ways, the best strategy right now for Ukrainian side is to be on defensive and bleed out Russian troops, let them attack and bleed themselves out. And that's really, at this point, giving the incompetence of Ukrainian top military command, and the whole structure is completely wrong. Like as I said, Soviet army, the best thing to do is really be on defense, and just kind of like try to wait for the right moment when the Russian side will give sort of opportunity. But for now, there's definitely no opportunity from the Russian side at this moment. And then I'll just finish with this Kherson or Dnipro front line. So Ukrainian bridgeheads are still there. Russian side abandoned attempts to destroy them. So basically, they just kind of coexist at this point there. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Bye bye.